Hey guys, how are we? So this episode I have the beautiful Steph on, and we are going to kind of be chatting a little bit about OCD. So it kind of came up in conversation and I was like, what? No, I never would have thought that you had OCD. And it just shows the definition of suffering with something from within and nobody having and be like, oh, sure, you're grand. You know, and not even considering that there's something that you might have been dealing with or battling with. So I was like, oh my God, would you be interested in coming on to talk? And you're like, yeah, let's do it. So tell me a little bit, like, I am very naive. So as I was saying, like, when I think of OCD, I think of maybe the extreme of like someone having to switch a light switch 91 million times, you know, and that's I think that's what everybody thinks of with OCD. But obviously there is different
to it,
stages of it. So kind of how did you start figuring, or what did you know, what was your first kind of things that you were like, oh, okay.
So it was like many years of figuring this out because when I first started having any sort of kind of symptoms, it wasn't traditional like what you think OCD would be. Again, like those things that you're like, oh, that's OCD, but it wasn't that. So I didn't know. I just thought I was just this weird kind of messed up kid with all these like little quirks. So to go back as far, I say when I was like 7 or 8.
I wasn't expecting you to kind of start seeing that young.
Now, who knows, it could have been going on younger, but like that's kind of my first memory. You know? It was, I went to a friend's birthday party. And she choked on pizza. Now she's fine, like you're like, oh, this is getting dark.
No more pizza.
But she choked on the cheese, and then she was fine. But it just kind of was a bit, you know, ooh, at the time, obviously. And then I was, from that point on, I was terrified of eating because I would choke. I was scared I was going to choke. There was this potential of me choking and dying, so I was scared to eat. So I stopped eating, well, not really, like my mom didn't let me not eat, but I stopped eating when I could, and then when I did eat, and I was forced to eat my meals, I'd have, you know, I'd need 7 or 8 glasses of milk, and every bite I took, I'd be drinking all this liquid to make sure it would go down. Like, totally irrational, didn't matter what I was eating. It wasn't just like cheese, I was scared of choking.
And like the first thing of that would be like eating disorder.
100%, totally, and I'm sure that's
eating disorder. You know, but literally when you're saying that, I would have been like, oh my God, I would have just assumed that was some sort of eating disorder.
I'm sure that's what my mom would have thought, right? Is that
rather than it being
and I would have at that point again. That was never OCD was never even brought up. But the washing the hands started around that age as well. So contamination is one of the things, like it's a very common OCD thing. And then it's one of my my more traditional ones that I do have to this day. Now I manage it way better now, but the washing the hands started. So it was like every surface, and I'm 7 or 8, like I'm a kid, and every surface to me was contaminated. And it all revolved around, like you think, oh, I don't want to be dirty, but it wasn't that. I was scared of harming others. So it was like, if I touched something that one of my family members then touched and they got sick,
it was
all on me. So it was like my mom would be making dinner in the kitchen and I would come into the kitchen and my hand would graze off the countertop. And I would think, oh, what if at one point there was raw meat on that countertop? I better go wash my hands. And that would continue, and that would be for everything until literally, so I'd be walking from the bathroom. It was mad. So my hands were like raw, bleeding. Like it was like, it got really, really bad. That was, I think, that and the choking thing, those things kind of coincided. And so my mom was like, right, I'm going to take you to the doctor. But again, at that stage, like I don't recall mental health or OCD even coming up. Sure, I was a kid. And it was the 90s. And I think they just, you know.
It was like, this is just something.
People didn't talk about this stuff. So that was kind of the first thing in hindsight, but at the time I had no idea, and it continued. So it all kind of then started revolving around thought, and that's what I would struggle with the most now. Obsessive thinking, intrusive thoughts, false memories. So basically, you have memories, and then you have memories that you tell yourself. So now then I have a hard time differentiating, did that happen or did I think that happened? And I obsess over those thoughts in my head.
Because I read a really interesting thing on like memories, which I didn't know, and it was like you remember the last way you recalled it.
Exactly,
So every time you go back on that thought and you might change a little bit or over-exaggerate a little bit, that is now that new memory.
That's truth to you. That's your memory.
And I just thought that was like madness.
I know, it's wild, isn't it?
So, like, if you were then...
So it would snowball, and all of a sudden I have these scenarios in my head that I'm stressed out about, that I'm obsessing over, and they may or may not even have happened. Or it might have started as, like, there might be a seed of a scenario that happened, So that started happening, and then it was like, so that's one part, is just the memories, but then there's, like, the intrusive thoughts. So there's different, like, I encourage anybody listening to read up on it. I'm not an expert in it. I don't know everybody's version either. But there's a type of OCD called pure OCD, and there's these different categories that you might have these intrusive thoughts in, and they fall in all sorts of things. Like, could be religion orientated, it could be sexuality, like being, you're obsessed with the fact that you could be gay, and you don't have anything wrong, like you have no problem with gay people or anything like that, but you're obsessed and you just keep thinking about it even though you are straight or you are gay. It's like you're obsessing over
something, and that is then your thing,
and you just obsess over, like, so there's different types, right? And I would have the harm one, which is and this is where now the connection for me when I learned about this I started making connections with all the things from my childhood, but where I am terrified that I'm gonna harm my family. And so the thing with pure OCD and all of these things is the thoughts that you obsess over are like the furthest from the thing you would actually do. You're not a bad person, you're not, but because you're thinking about it, you think, oh, well, I'm only thinking about this because I'm a bad person. There must be something in me that's making me think this way. So it's all consuming
continuously, like, which must have been exhausting.
It's exhausting.
And then going through like your teenage years with like normal teenage shit that like everybody goes through, and then topping it off with,
honestly, and you don't know what's wrong. You just think, like, it's very isolating, because there's part of me that's saying, I'm the only person in the world that thinks these, like, that is going through, like, what is wrong with me?
Because nobody's talking about it.
No, nobody talks about it. And life was just so hard. Like, everything was hard. Everything was an effort. I remember I'd have to lay in bed, right? And I'd have to tell my mom, this was when I was young, again, 7, 8, 9. I'd have to tell her every thought that was on my mind throughout the day. And she'd have to tell me that, oh, that's Steph, that's normal. You're not a bad person. Because I was worried that all these thoughts I had were making me a bad person. So I'd have to get them off my chest. To my mom.
And have some sort of, like, condolence that, like, they're natural thoughts, and it's not.
It was a coping mechanism for her to then tell me I was okay, and I just then, but like later learning about OCD, like, that's just feeding the OCD, all of that kind of, those kind of, that all just feeds it kind of, because it just feeds the cycle. So it was really, my whole life, and then there was certain things like during that time as well, I had a few like ritualistic things that you hear about the light switches, and you hear about, you know, that sort of thing, but I had to say certain things. So I had to, like, before bed, I had to yell out, "Good night, everyone. I love you 6 times and more," at the top of my lungs, so my whole family could hear it from my bedroom. And it was 6 times and more were my 4 family members, my mom, dad, my brother, and I, the 2 animals. And then, and more, because I needed them to know, and more than that, I love you the most. And if I didn't do it, I thought, like, what if something ever happened to them, that would have been my fault, because I didn't let them know I loved them. But it's
still going back to that whole harm thing that you're going to... Okay, and like, I'm dying, and we're gonna like jump straight, but like, it is like the thing that like, I'm like, so you just had a baby?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, so
I'm like, I can only imagine
during COVID.
Like that because the harm thing is a trigger, and now you have this little person that is like yours, and you have like this intense naturally to protect, and then you're adding on.
So I've had to do a lot of work. If I would have had a baby in my early 20s, I don't know how I would have got through it. But because I've done so much work, I'm able to manage. And Hollis Street has an awesome mental health team. If anybody's suffering and then gets pregnant, I found that immensely helpful. I had been through therapy, and I felt like I had a decent enough grasp on it, but I was worried about, one, being pregnant in COVID, because again, it wasn't about me getting COVID and getting sick, it was I am carrying a life, and what if this life gets COVID, or what if, so everything all of a sudden was a threat to me. Do you know? And then the intrusive thoughts, that's a whole other layer of it. And it's, so I saw the team at, and did a little bit of cognitive behavioral therapy. Which is like one of the main ways they treat OCD. A little bit of like exposure. So basically they make you kind of face it. And you just, so like the therapist I was seeing licked her shoe in the session.
Licked her shoe.
To let me know that it wasn't gonna hurt me, or like this is how much, like, I won't get sick from this, essentially.
Okay.
Now, she didn't make me do it because I was pregnant and COVID. She was like, you do have valid concerns right now. Normally, I would make you lick your shoe. And I was like, okay. COVID saves the day. Because
Oh, God, right.
Yeah. But then, like, so there's that, right? And then, obviously, so what's really interesting is, I obviously, when I was growing up, just thought I was really weird and this was all happening. But then what happened is I started getting really physical symptoms. So I started getting severe anxiety and panic attacks out of nowhere.
Okay.
So I was sitting in class, final year of high school, and I thought my throat started closed. Like, I was having an allergic reaction to something. Yeah. And it was all the real classic, like, if you ever had a panic or anxiety attack, it's like,
the chest,
like,
the
can't
whole,
breathe, like, you're like, you just want to, like, fight or flight, you just want to go. Like, I got up from the class, I ran out of the class, I was like, oh, something's happening to me, you know?
Yeah.
But I started getting them really bad, and I took myself to emergency, I'd say 3 or 4 times, thought I was having a heart attack.
Yeah.
Every time I was totally fine, obviously. Not fine, but I was.
Yeah.
But again, even at this stage, right? So they told me they thought I was having panic attacks. So that was my final year of high school. First year of college, I started getting them so bad I was having like 5 or 6 a day.
Wow.
And in hindsight, what was triggering them was all these intrusive thoughts. At the time, I thought, nothing in my life is bad, nothing's happened, but I was tortured in my head.
Of course.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and it was bringing this on. This is how it was manifesting. It was coming out in these like very physical,
you literally couldn't take it anymore, so that was the only way that your body could nearly release this built up toxic energy, if you wanted to say, in your...
But I'm telling you, not until I was having 5 or 6 a day was it like, oh, maybe you should talk to somebody. Like it was like then a mental health discussion. Mad. Like, my whole life, it was just, nobody knew.
Because you were saying to me that you actually only kind of started realising you had watched something, you had seen something.
I have a sister of a friend.
Okay.
Did a blog post about her pure OCD, and I was like, oh my God, like, this is what I have. This is the exact same thing. And
mad.
Yeah.
But it's
and I'm talking, that was like 2 years ago or something.
It is to be talking about everything and anything, you know, and it goes back to when I do say, like, no situation or journey or life event is too small or too, you know, like, everything is an important thing to discuss.
Yeah. 100%.
You know, because... Like, if people were talking about it more, you would have... And but your parents might have known, you know.
Sure, they didn't know either, do you know?
But no one. It was... No. That's what I was saying to you about my mum, like, and I was saying about my... Like, having the binge eating disorder.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh, yeah, I realised there was something, but what was I supposed to do? Like... I was like, you know, so I was, you know, shoving wrappers down the back of the sofa so nobody knew I was eating.
Yeah.
And everybody did know, but I thought they didn't know, and it was just like, sure, what was there to do? Like,
I know. It's
you know, and that's just why it's just so important. I'm so glad I'm doing this, just to like get as much knowledge on everything out there, because the stuff that you have said now, I would have never known.
Yeah.
Like, I would never have known. Like,
and I think that, and that's one of the main reasons why I get so excited when you talk about you doing this and all the different topics and all the different things, because I'm like, this is so important, and why I'm so thankful you're having me, because like we were talking about before, like, I'd say, you know, anybody who watches this, if you're in my immediate, like, very close friend, you'll know.
Yeah.
But, like, beyond that, there'll be some people that I interact with a lot that probably would be very surprised to know about this. Probably a lot of my family.
Yeah.
Do you know? Like,
which is mad,
because
you could be at, like, a family dinner and an intrusive thought would come over and literally be like, what's wrong with Steph?
Yeah.
And nobody knows. Like, you know, it's one of those things that... Because it's not shown, as I was saying earlier, not shown on the outside, the immediate outside, you know.
But it does.
Like, you know.
But it does, it comes out in ways like mood shifts. And, why is she overreacting about that, or being this way about that? Or, you know, there might be situations that happen and it's like, I'm suffering. You know, and it's coming out this way because it's the only way I know how to handle it at the time, sort of thing.
100%. And it goes, like, everything will kind of, over the episodes, touch off other things. So it's like myself and Laura in the last episode were talking about that whole situation of what's a you problem and a me problem. And you might come into me and be having a really bad day and not be as chatty as you always have, and then you leave and I'm like, does she have a problem with me?
Yeah.
But that is like, no, you could have just been having a bad day because I don't understand what's going on in your head. So why am I taking it onto my chest?
100%.
I should be like, no, that's not Steph. It's just a bad day. Next time I see her, it's going to be 100% like back to normal.
Yeah.
Rather than me taking it and then my head twisting. Have I done something wrong? Did I say something wrong? God, did I post something on Instagram that she's seen that she didn't like? You know, but that's how
it is,
your mind snowballs.
Totally.
And it's so important if you met someone on the road that shoved you and walked by without apologising, like, they could have just got the worst news ever. 100%. But to us, like, fucking prick. You know? Yeah. And that's where our mindsets have to shift into it. You know what? Maybe they just got some really, really bad news. That's a them problem. Yeah. Not a me
You're
problem.
driving in your car and someone cuts you off, or they're speeding, and you're like, you don't know what that person's going through.
That's
but you're thinking, Jesus, look at them, like, being so dangerous, but you're like, you don't know, maybe they're on their way to,
100%. You know, and if somebody, like, had have looked at me a few years ago, I was so angry, I was so, like, the world was against me, but that's just because I was in a really bad place. So even if you are an actual, like, a dick, you're a dick because of something. And it's just because, so I think that is where it's so important for our mindsets to change.
And not take that on. Take on other people's things.
Because this is, like, you're a prime example of me never realising that you and literally until I came up with conversation and I would have been like, well, that's James' life, you know.
And, like, the social media is the worst for that as well. Like, I'd say people see it and they're like, oh, look at that perfect life, and, you know, she just had a baby and she has everything. Like, we struggled for years. It was IVF, and and I was seeing a mental health team during my pregnancy, and I struggle with these things every day. You know what I mean? Like, nobody really knows what's going on in someone's life, and I think it's just, and I think that's why it's so important to talk about it. Again, bring it back to that. Like, 100%. It's just, I know not everybody's comfortable talking about it, and that's fair enough. But, like, for me, because I am open about it, I wanted to talk about it because I'm like, I think that the more people that hear other people's stories, hear these things, if there's one person that watches this, that it kind of, or they see someone in their life that, oh my God, maybe they're struggling with this, or, you know, bring more awareness to it.
100%. But the intrusive thoughts is so important, because if there is like a 14-year-old girl out there watching it and she's like, what's wrong with me? Why do I want to do this? Why do I, you know? Oh, and then she's seen you and been like, oh my God, maybe I actually do need to have a conversation with my doctor. Or go to a therapist 100%. And have the conversation with it. And look, if it comes out that they're like, no, you know, you don't, that's at least you figured it out. Like, why not try and make your life easier rather than dealing with something in silence because you don't know whether it's severe enough or, you know, as bad as someone else that you think. But, like, everybody's problem is their own little thing. You know, you should treat it.
You can't compare.
You can't compare.
No.
You can't.
And I think that if anybody's watching can identify with this, like, you need to take it seriously, because with, like, therapy and just even knowing more about it, you can really, like, find a bit of freedom, because it's like you feel trapped in your mind. And don't get me wrong, because I still struggle quite a bit. Because of, like, different therapies and stuff I've done, I have my ways of dealing with it. I'm really trying to overcome it. It's an ongoing thing. Really, it is, because you think you're getting somewhere, and I've done some of the exposure stuff and I'm doing really well for a while, and then you start slipping again, you know? The one when I was pregnant, another thing, because of around contamination, I have a hard time cooking because of raw meat and stuff like that. So, like, I would use, like, 17 spatulas when I'm making, like, raw chicken, like, fajitas or something, say, in the pan, and I'm doing things and there's raw chicken involved. Poultry is, like, a big one for me, so I'd be using all these different utensils, switching them out every time anything touches anything, wiping the counters in between everything.
It must
like,
be exhausting.
I just don't like to cook, because it's taken,
and
then the whole time I'm worried that I've made someone sick with what I've cooked.
How do you think that is going to be when the baby gets older and starts eating food?
I know. Tough, because I'm already finding it tough. In terms of, like, sterilization of the bottles and you know what I mean? Like, all of that kind of stuff. So, but I think, again, I'm going to keep working on it. I'm actually actively seeking kind of a CBT, like cognitive behavioral therapy, and OCD kind of specialist therapist. I'd love to just talk to someone again.
Cognitive behavioral therapy, touch on that just a little bit, on how it's different to...
So ERP, which is the exposure, that's a part of it. So that's the only piece that I've really done is I've done a little bit. And again, I haven't had, like, massive the mental health team, so the very first doctor I ever saw when I was probably 19, or therapist, a psychologist or whatever, I can't remember his exact title, but he didn't call it CBT or ERP, like the exposure, but what he did was, it was when I was really suffering with the anxiety attacks, and he said, next time you have one, sit there and let it happen. You're going to want to get it, because I used to get up and like splash water on my face and like run around the house like a headless chicken. So he's like, sit there and let it happen. It's going to be terrifying. Yeah. You're going to feel like you're dying, that you can't breathe, that you're going to pass out. And he's like, and you won't. Yeah. I promise you. And so I did, and it was the worst thing ever. But like, that was life-changing for me. Because I now knew that these anxiety attacks weren't going to kill me. And I knew they weren't, but until...
when you're in it,
it's so scary. It's so scary.
You're on a whole different wavelength.
Yes. Like, and you can't,
like any logic just doesn't come into your out the window. Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, so that's one of the main. So I'm looking to actually have more of that done. Okay. Because so that was the first kind of introduction to it I had, and then through Hollis Street they did a little bit, but again, it just touched the surface. I had probably like, I don't know, 8-10 sessions. Okay. Like I was going once weekly sort of thing, or once every 2 weeks depending, and then unfortunately it dropped off. Like they never followed up with me after I had the baby, which is unfortunate. Now my GP did say to me, oh, how are you getting on? Yeah. But I thought the mental health team would check in on me, because they said they would.
Whereas like, you've had the baby now, goodbye.
They said they wouldn't do that, and they kind of did that. Sorry if anybody works there, but they kind of did that.
Yeah. So like the plan is now to kind of be determined and work.
Yeah, work towards it, because it will be a problem for me. Yeah. And I know that. And like
how impressive is that now that you're registering it now before it allowing you to build up on you and being like, right, okay, now I need to go. You're catching you're catching it before it gets to that point, which is pretty impressive. Yeah. Not a lot of people can do that until like I find that everybody kind of searches for help when
it's too late.
It's too late. Yeah. Because that's what I've done.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing is any slight kind of just do it. What have you got to lose?
Well, that's it.
It's
there's still just such a stigma around mental health things, which just it sucks.
It's a joke.
So much,
And I feel the thing is it shouldn't be. So like what I'm going to say, probably some people won't like and screw up. The mental health side of things went a little bit too looking for sympathy.
Okay.
And using it as an excuse the whole time. Mm-hmm. We are not looking for sympathy.
No.
We are not using it as an excuse.
I'm not looking at it as an excuse to get out of work or stay at home. Sure, I'd say my coworkers don't even know this about me. They're all going to find out.
But that's where it went. And I think that's where this whole mental health issue got a bit of a bad rep. Yeah. Because it is like, I can't go into work, I have anxiety.
Yeah, I know.
And that, like, it is
taking advantage of people who are really suffering. Like, that. Because I think it's normal. There are certain things that I do, like check the straightener 1,000 times before I leave the house. Yeah. A lot of people do that. It doesn't mean you're in the depths of OCD. Yeah. It just means you don't want your house to burn down. Do you rub your hand over all the sockets? Do you do, like, the extra things that I do kind of are a bit, you know. But I think people, I'm so OCD, like, look how clean my place is. Like, OCD is not an adjective. You are not OCD. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
And I think anxiety is used, like, which is a great example, right? So say back in secondary school, and there was a session on the weekend, and you got with one of the lads that you shouldn't have got with, or you're embarrassed to get with. And I remember sitting in the car crying and be like, I don't want to go to school after getting in. Nowadays, I'd be like, that's anxiety.
Yeah.
I should give you the day off. My daughter suffers from anxiety. No, I just got with the wrong lad on the weekend and now I don't want to face it. Yeah. There is a difference. Anxiety is just thrown around way too much.
Mm-hmm. It is. Same with depression. I'm so depressed. Are you depressed though? Because you're probably not depressed. Like, you're upset right now.
That's it. Yeah,
you're going through. Everyone goes through bad times, and that's allowed. But
100%.
But that's what I think what you're getting at as well is like builds on that stigma with mental health.
That's
all
it.
These things.
So everybody is getting sick of hearing it, but getting sick of hearing it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, 100%.
For the wrong reasons. So like, though a lot of what I talk about and what I will talk about on the podcast is the mental health side of things, but I will always pull it back to mindset.
Yeah.
You know, it has to be, yes, we're talking about mental health. Yes, we're trying to get what different people suffer through, different people's journeys. But the goal is to change the mindset, you know, to get help and then work on not only maybe what you are dealing with, but also what you can change to make your life better in the long run. Yeah. And I never ever want any of these videos. My story was not a sympathy thing. It wasn't a feel sorry for me, and it wasn't a looking for an excuse. We don't want that.
No, geez.
We are more than capable of going out, looking after a baby, having a job.
Yeah.
Me being self-employed, me dealing with my shit.
Yeah.
And the stigma, like, I don't know how we got onto this ramble, but anyway, I think mental health has got a bad rep as of recently for the
wrong reasons. Yeah.
The right reasons in a way.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's wrong that it has it, but it has it for the right reasons because not everybody has anxiety and not everybody... You're anxious going into school because you didn't study for your exam or you got with the wrong lad.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You're not having a panic attack, love.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
But
that's
when... So when you went to your first doctor's appointment and then obviously you came home and you had a chat with the family and like even dating.
Yeah.
Like how...
Oh my God, I have to tell you the story because I was on a date when my second ever panic attack happened.
Okay.
Yeah, sort of a date. He was a friend, but anyway, this was back when I was like 20.
Yeah.
And we were at a drive-in movie theater.
Okay.
And so it was in his, like, he had like an SUV, big Jeep type thing, and we were just sitting there watching the movie, and I felt it coming, but I didn't know what was wrong with me.
Yeah.
And there was like this hut where you go and buy snacks and stuff, and I was like, I'll be right back, I'm just gonna go get a water. And I left, and I never went back, because I had a full-blown anxiety attack. I had to call my dad. My dad had to go to his truck and say she wasn't coming back, like, and I wrote him a message after, like, I wasn't interested or anything, but I wrote him a message after just saying, like, I'm really sorry for leaving you like that. It was probably so weird, but this is what happened. And it kind of, his answer was really short, did not get it at all. Like, just that was like, so,
want an excuse to get out of the date. Like,
like, it was just, in a way, I don't blame people because you can empathize.
Yeah.
But if you don't have mental health issues, which, like, I just feel I would love to know what that feels.
Yeah.
To not struggle. But like if you couldn't possibly know what it's like for me because you don't have OCD.
No,
you can empathize with me.
Yeah.
And you can, have sympathy for my situation or whatever. Like you can feel like, oh geez, that must be tough.
Yeah.
But you can't know.
No.
And I don't expect people to.
Yeah.
There a lot of people listening will be like, that is weird. She is messed up. Do you know what I mean?
No.
But I don't expect them to, but it is tough, and I never really talked about it I wouldn't really bring it up because again, to me, like I seem fine.
Yeah.
Until somebody got close to me, then of course I would talk about it because you have to, because otherwise they'd be like, what is going on? Because there'd be some days that I would have total meltdowns just from the anxiety attacks, or the thoughts would just get so overwhelming that I would break.
Yeah. And the exhaustion. Like that's like...
Oh, it's
another level.
Yeah.
Like, so like, though everyone's situations differ so hugely, there are things that we can connect on, which is probably generally the pure exhaustion from fighting yourself the whole time. There's nothing more draining than having to fight your own thoughts.
Oh, yeah.
Holy moly.
Takes everything out of you.
Everything. Because like you're even fighting it while trying to have a conversation. So you're doing like multiple things. You're trying to think about what you're talking about, but yet there's these thoughts in the back of your head trying to take over the whole time.
And I've had people say to me before that I seemed like kind of spaced out when they were talking to me, or that I didn't see, like, usually I'm pretty attentive when I'm talking to someone. I really do try my best to listen.
So just as usual, I had to do like little camera charge because one day but we were chatting just while the camera was charging about that you've done a lot of the research yourself, and there's an Instagram page that you follow, isn't there?
Yeah, obsessively ever after.
Okay.
She's amazing. I think she's American or something. She has she suffers with OCD as well, but she's become a therapist out of it, and she is brilliant. I think finding her page, and then in addition kind of doing my own research and learning about it makes you feel almost seen, or it's like, oh, I'm not the only one. You know, other people have OCD in theory.
Yeah.
But when you see it so plainly there, and the Instagram page is brilliant because and it's really simple. Like she's like, you know,
breaks it down to like,
but it hits
not the non-scientific thing, and you're like, oh, that hits it on the button.
100%, and you're just like, oh my god, that's me, and like feeling so seen. You're like, oh, okay, so I'm not a weirdo. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. This is something that, and I know you know that, like you know that
it's
OCD
like having a little community of you know being able to connect with someone, being able to have reassurance.
It's that
because at the end of the day, no matter how much someone tells you that you're not on your own, you're not crazy, at the same time, when you sit at home and your head starts spiraling, you're like, I am alone, I am crazy. But then if you hit Instagram and this goes back to why it's so important to follow people that resonate with you. Don't follow people that you want to be. Don't follow people 100%. That when you're scrolling through and you see it, they're like, I needed to read that.
I've done huge work on that over the last year, I'd say, where I've just unfollowed people that don't make me feel good. And that's okay.
And that is
that's so okay. Okay.
I've done it as well. And I just literally need to follow people that seem to just, when I see things, I'm like, that I needed that today.
Yeah, exactly.
I needed that little boost, even if it's a little bit of motivation, or if it's a post saying I feel like shit today. You know. I needed it. But that's, again, you were saying, just if any of it resonates with anybody, just do a bit of research. Like, and just...
You know what, like, it was crazy, because nobody really was talking about it. I didn't know anybody, or so I thought at the time, that now I have some suspicions about some people in my life that actually probably do have OCD. They don't want to admit it. A bit more old school maybe, do you know? But I think because nobody else was talking about it, I would literally, like, type into Google, why am I thinking this? Or I can't stop obsessing over these thoughts of this. Or am I making up stories in my head? And all of a sudden I would find these articles about things. And I'm like, oh, and I just felt I was comforted by it. Again, you never want anybody to be going through bad things, but at the same time, when you find people that are going through what you're going through, there's a real comfort in that. And
100%.
I think that's why this, again, today was so important for me, because I'm like, if anybody listening resonates or knows someone that like, if 20-year-old me found that, I would have had so many less years of suffering as bad as I was, you know?
100%. And though I love Google, at the same time, I'm like, don't Google yourself to death. You're not dying. Maybe try and find, like, even, like, real people Instagram pages that, like, I'm so happy when people send me a message being like, look, Rebecca, that resonated with me. And I'd say you'd be the same if someone popped you a message being like, I think like that all the time. This is okay. You know, rather than Googling it and just getting a Harvard script.
No, it's so true. In fact, like, only recently I've started actually, since I found this Instagram page, I reshare some of her things. So I'd say there's people in my life now that do know that I suffer from OCD because I'm sharing these things now. But people private message me, and they, you know, whether it's just supportive, being like, that's dead right, or I had one person message being like, my sister goes through, I had no idea that you suffer with this. And I was like, And so even that, you know, so again, finding these pages that you can, like, that you resonate with.
That's it.
People who, are going through it. Because you're right. I say I did Google things, but there's two sides.
There is. Like, Google's great. I love it. But at the same time, I'm like, don't Google yourself to death. You know, find someone that you love following on Instagram, and that, you know, you're happy to send a message to. And just be like, look, I watched so-and-so. That's kind of how I've been feeling. And that's what, like, this whole thing is about. Is starting a community and starting... Opening connections and conversations, you know, to people that you would never have maybe had. You know, you don't know where it's going to take you. So, the big question.
Oh.
Dun, dun, dun.
What are you going to throw at me now?
If you were to tell your younger self one thing, what would it be?
Oh, I think that you're gonna be okay, and that, oh my god, I feel like I'm gonna get emotional, but I'm gonna try to keep it together. No, I think, cheesy, but like, you aren't alone. This is this is a real thing. You're gonna be okay. It's hard because it's like, I think that you're gonna be okay. You're gonna figure this thing out, and that you're not a little weirdo, like thinking,
that was just.
It's not even. I didn't think I was weird. I just was like, what the heck is wrong with me? So I think just knowing that, I think if I could tell myself, like, this is a mental health disorder, and you're gonna get help, and you're gonna be okay. Yeah. If I could tell my parents, I'm sure my parents think if I could only have known that she was going through this at a young age, maybe we could have had help for her, but they couldn't have known. I never blamed them for anything. Yeah. They couldn't have known what I was going through. Sure, I didn't know. Nobody knew, really, But I think just that, keep going. Yeah. It'll get easier. It'll get easier. And I think, as a parent myself, like, I will be really hyper aware of this as well with my daughter. Yeah. Just watching for any of those signs and being opening. My mom was always great at communication, so we'd always talk, but again, you don't know what you don't know, so we didn't know what the problem was. But I will be I know that some mental health stuff is genetic. I'll just, doesn't mean she's going to suffer from it, but I will just be mindful and that's the thing. Encourage the openness about it, talk about it. And
the more open you are, the more you can learn from everybody and from yourself, and be more aware, and that's the goal of everything.
It is.
We were discussing kind of probably maybe you coming back on to talk about your IVF journey. Yeah. So I'm just putting that out there if there's any questions to kind of, I'm going to just put you on the spot there as well. I was like, you're not getting away. That if there are any questions. But if there are any questions regarding any of this, make sure to, I'm sure your DMs are open, of course. Mine are as well. Yep. Make sure to follow me on Instagram and YouTube. Obviously, there's going to be a podcast every Sunday and different bits and bobs coming up. But I hope everybody kind of learned something or even picked up something from that you can take on in the future, that you can recognise with somebody else. Thank you so much. Yeah. I learned so much. I'm now like, I need to process it. Yeah. It's fascinating. Yeah. And is there anything else that I
don't know. I
think we covered everything really well.
I think we did, and I just again, I just hope that if anybody's watching this and they, but even if you can't identify with it at all, at least just knowing about it. Knowledge is power. Just knowing things,
That is it. It's exactly like the breathing thing. You could be sitting beside your friend and then you notice that and you're like, you know what, is everything okay? Yeah. And that's all you have to say. They can be like, but at least that you've acknowledged reading someone. Being aware. It goes back all to the same thing, and that's so important. It's just being mindful
of others.
Being aware. Switching your mindset.
And I think it kind of fosters, this whole kind of being kind to others, and just knowing that everybody's going through something.
Something. Yeah. And that something is the biggest thing that's going on with them at the minute. Yeah. Might not be, you might not think it is, but that is.
For them, that is.
Yeah. And that is what's the most important thing. But
awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
No, my pleasure. Yeah. But any questions, do send them our way. We are more than happy. My DMs are always open. I'm always here to help. And until our next chats.
Awesome.
Exciting.
Looking forward to it.
Bye.